So the way Sheffield College have got around this consistently is they have a programme called Employer Skills Academies, of which there are, I think, 6 or 7 already in existence, and they're across various different departments. So what Regather is proposing is to set up an Employer Skills Academy. So you pay a nominal sum each year, and then you basically work directly with students. That would mean sending them up to Regather Farm, possibly other sites, but certainly Regather Farm, for a number of sessions per year. And then that's effectively, it's an elective option. So the students don't have to do it, but they can do it if they want to. That's about as far as we've got detail-wise at the moment. And we've spoken to the horticultural staff, and they're very keen to follow it up because it's not something they can see that they can offer elsewhere, so they're keen to do that. But there's lots and lots of other details to go through, but that's about as far as we are at the moment. In terms of offering other sort of accredited training, I think right now I don't think our Farmstart would have any plans to do that. I think it would be much wiser to try and help people or help Sheffield College offer more training if there was a demand for it, but that remains to be seen, because Sheffield College's position has been the reason they don't offer more than horticultural level 2 is because there's no demand for it. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. So yeah, and bearing in mind what they offer is amenity horticulture, so it's, it has value, but it's not enough to join that gap between where they are now and starting in a Farmstart. If you're only 18 years old, that would be too big a leap. So providing this sort of Employer Skills Academy could be that bridge.
Thanks, Fran.
No worries.
Filling me in. Yeah, that sounds like very sort of location specific and people specific solution to this problem. It's good.
Yeah, I think it's a well-known route to get around what is essentially an ongoing problem.
Oh yeah, at the moment it really is.
Really rigid, yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Fran. Is there any last comments before we move on? Cool. I just wanted to welcome Rob and Caroline as well, which I didn't say earlier. So welcome. I think they come with Sonia from Leeds. Would you like to go next, Leeds folks?
Sure, yeah, would be really happy to go next. And to be honest, I'd quite like to throw Caroline and Rob into the mix, because they wrote the first report that we've done on the feasibility study. And as Caroline is a grower, I think her expertise and knowledge has really come through, and it's really highlighted some of the issues. But before I want to start, I just want to say I just really want to thank Fran for being really honest about, because when I see you present it, I'm just like, oh God, it's all coming together, and then you're like, actually we've got loads of steps still to do, and it's sort of like, okay, because I feel from this initial report that we've done, it feels like we have some early steps that we need to take care of before we can think of doing a Farmstart program. So it's just good to be part of the gang, I think. So Caroline and Rob, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, I'm happy to say a few introductory words, if that's all right with Rob.
Yeah, and do just introduce yourselves as well. Just say a bit about you.
Yeah, so sorry I was late. I was waiting on the old link, and the link wouldn't work for some reason, so that's why I wasn't here. But Sonia sent me a new one. So I live in Leeds, and I've been a food grower, but not commercially really. I mean, I've done a few little salad business for a while, but not a massive amount of commercial growing, but mainly community growing. But I've been involved in the food growing scene in Leeds for a number of years. And so Sonia asked us, myself and Rob, to write this report about a potential Farmstart. And so it's really interesting, because it's something that we've been talking about for quite a long time. In Leeds, it seems like we've got a lot of growing going on in pockets, basically. And there's not much bringing it together, and there's been various schemes over the years which have somewhat brought things together, but in terms of like market gardening, we are a bit lacking in that department basically. And so it's been really interesting to write this report and sort of explore this a bit more. And one of the key things that we came out with was that basically we need to join up, we need to like raise the profile of our local food growing network, or create a network really, like before we even start to think about a Farmstart. Because we've got we have got some exciting developments in Leeds. We've got a couple of CSAs which have just started, and one of them's been going 2 years, and they're really successful. But apart from that, we've just got a few other little farms dotted around, but they're kind of isolated, and there's not many of them. So I think we decided that the first step would be to try and bring together the existing network and get more interest from that as before we do any start looking at the Farmstart. And also the other issue that we have is route to market. So we don't have a clear route to market either. And we did look at this last year when we were looking at some research about a patchwork farm in Leeds, and we did some research about whether we could set up an alternative route to market. But it was kind of like chicken and egg, because we don't have enough producers to really warrant that. But then it's like, we think that we haven't got enough producers, people can't set up because there's no easy route to market. You know, so we've met a couple of local farmers who are sheep farmers, and one of them wants to grow vegetables, but it's a stumbling block for him is that there's no route to market. So it's kind of like chicken and egg, and at the moment there's no like real anyone to kind of take that forward. So yeah, but one of the really positive things that came out of this though is that one of our CSAs is already starting to do some training. They've been going a couple of years, and they are doing like some community things like farm hacks, and they have taken on a trainee, and they're super interested in the Farmstart scheme, and they kind of seem like the ideal people to help move it forward, but they haven't got much land. They've got a really, really tiny amount of land, and they're using all of it. So but they do have in terms of customer base, like they are oversubscribed, and so there could be a potential to use their box scheme as a route to market. But yeah, I don't know have you got anything else to add, Rob?
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, not too much, because that's a great summary. Yeah, and just from what you're saying, it feels like there's several sides that we need to work on at once, and you know, it feels like they all need to move forward together. Otherwise, like Fran was saying, if we were just given a piece of land, I don't think we quite, you know, have the people ready to move in and manage that land. It needs to sort of things inching forward together would be the best approach. So yeah, joining everything up. And I'll just introduce myself a little bit. I'm quite new to growing and urban farming. I've worked in sort of social housing as a project manager, so I had an interest in community-led housing. And there's definitely a bit of overlap between community-supported agriculture and community housing as well. So I've lived in Leeds for about 10 years on and off, but I learned a lot about new organisations and everything doing this report. But I do think, yeah, that a lot of people who live here wouldn't know about some of these farms. So raising the profiles definitely a big part of it as well. I think that's about all.
I just want to throw one thing in. I think it was you, Fran. You said something just the other day in one of the meetings we were in last week about just going for it and starting a little something. And it was about, and we're talking about having like a farmer's market that was no cost to the people to join it, and to just to try it. And I feel quite inspired by that. So that's something I want to propose but I'm looking for some funding too. But to propose at our Feed Leeds meeting that I'm going to after this, and Foodwise tomorrow as well. But just sort of, maybe Meanwood could host something, and with volunteers, and we could just try and do something to bring people together.
I feel like that's to say, because there's a lot of people interested in local growing in Leeds, and it just feels like the energy needs moving forward. And you're right, that's a really good way of doing that sometimes, is just to do something, just to like start the road and then see how it evolves. Yeah, so that and we talked already about doing a market at Meanwood Farm anyway, so that would work really well. Yeah, that's a great idea. Love it.
Is Meanwood the CSA that you were talking about?
Yeah, Meanwood Valley Urban Farm is the CSA. They've been going the longest, so they've been I think they just finished their second season, and they're completely subscribed like for their box scheme, so they're really successful in that way.
They're also very well connected because the CEO is an ex-councillor, so he knows everybody in the council very well, which is
sounds like
handy.
a really good place to lay the start creating the foundations with Meanwood. Sounds like there's lots of
and the venues, the location's been open for I think nearly 40 years, hasn't it? They weren't doing the market gardening, but they had animal petting areas and things like that, so they're really well known in the community, and they've got signs and car park and everything.
But I also think the whole neighborhood is going through a redevelopment and creating its own identity that is unique. It's different from Chapel Allerton. It's different from some of the other local communities that have been a bit more up and coming before. So I think there's a real opportunity to make it a real foodie, but like a foodie producing area of the city.
Yeah, and we've also got, I think Kirkstall CSA, it could be a real resource because they've actually got I think they've got a long-term lease on council land, but it's quite a big site compared to Meanwood. But they've just started this year, so they just finished the end of their first growing season, but they could potentially have a bit of space for like a mini kind of a start of a Farmstart.
Yeah, there's one interesting thing about that site is it's quite large. It's down by the river. They're sharing the land at the moment with the probation service, so some people come down and farm on that land. I don't know if they're ex-offenders or maybe from the local prison across the way, but there's also the Environment Agency doing flood alleviation works, and they have about 1.5 acres of land as their site compound, but that work's going to be finishing in a year or two, and then that land will go to the CSA again for them to use. The only catch being it's the lowest part of the site, which is prone to flooding, so they're kind of conscious that it might not be suitable for all vegetables, and they suggested maybe orchards or something that would survive occasional winter flooding. So yeah, the fact that Kirkstall's kind of got this land coming available in phases could be really useful.
I'll go to Caroline, and then I think Bethan, did you have your hand up? And maybe Susie? But Caroline, did I say Caroline? Catherine. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to the market idea and about jumping in with both feet. We started this summer just gone. I might have mentioned this actually. We started a barrow market for local growers. So we limited the space by asking everybody to bring the produce in a wheelbarrow because we wanted to do something that was deliberately different to a farmer's market. And we wanted to give people who are very small scale producers just a chance to kind of test the market. And we did that without really, we never really do anything with a lot of planning. I'll come to that when I do the presentation about the Farmstart, but we just thought we'd just give it a go. And we came to an arrangement with the local park. We put it through our public liability insurance. We spoke to Environmental Health, who cleared it because it was a pop-up. That they didn't need to have all those measures in place, and we just invited local growers to come and sell whatever was surplus via that, and that was really successful. Stopped for the winter now, but we will continue it. But that, just having a go at that has been really, really helpful. You know, we established that there was a market for that kind of produce locally. We gave people a few kind of We gave them all a briefing anyway, but we gave them the confidence to just have a go and see what it was like to actually sell the stuff that they've grown, know about presentation, know about talking to customers. And that's a really nice kind of interim step, I think. It's worked really well for us.
I really love that idea. That's fantastic for us, because we've got a local market that's just started in Meanwood, not in the farm, and they couldn't find any veg growers. But I think that if we help them, we might have connections to some veg growers, because a lot of our local farmers markets, like when I was selling salad, they wouldn't let us into the farmers market because they said, oh well, we've got one vegetable producer, we're not having another one. They're all like that. They're just only allowing one. And it's not very inclusive, basically. So yeah,
it's also very difficult as well when you're at those points in the season where you've not got a lot to fill a market stall. So it kind of got around it. And there's a few things to iron out. Like we've got lots of people who, for example, were selling rhubarb at one point, and we had to get them to kind of normalize the prices so that nobody was out competing anybody else. But they're all things that have been resolved just by communicating, really.
Okay, to Susie and then to Anna.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say I'm loving listening to you all. Got my video off because I'm trying to multitask. But yeah, we're doing an intro to CSA course, a residential. Well, it's not residential. Well, it might be residential at Meanwood farm on the 19th and 20th of March next year. For sort of North, it's the one that Ed Hamer does at Chag Food. He set it up at Chag Food CSA in Devon. So he's coming up north to deliver it in partnership with Ben and Luke. But yeah, if I was just thinking, if there's, I mean, yeah, it's for anybody in the north of England. So I don't know who we're going to get, but if there's any sort of Farmstart stuff that you might want to tell people about, that's an opportunity to do it. And well, I haven't got an Eventbrite link yet because we're just finalising. There's also a Northern CSA gathering will be one of those days. But yeah, so just, yeah, if any of you want to come or give me stuff I can hand out or talk to people about, that'd be great. Thanks.
Brilliant. If you've got anything to share on that, any links or info when it comes about, Susie, do you want to just pass it to us and I'll send it round? Great. Anna.
Yeah, so because you talked about markets, I could just talk all day about markets. I've been running a seasonal one for the last 5 years. And if you're starting out from scratch, I really encourage you to think about who holds the risk. I've seen a lot of people that organize everything and then they have to cover the costs if people don't show up and all of this sort of stuff. They put all the work in to get gazebos and all of this sort of thing. So if you're doing it, I would encourage you to think about what the purpose of it is for. And like when we spoke to a lot of local growers, being on a market is a waste of their time. But if you set it up as like this marketing tool to promote where people can then access stuff from veg boxes or CSA schemes or other things, that's when it becomes really useful. So just be really clear about what the purpose is, because if you aim to run one regularly, it's a lot of time for a lot of growers for very little money. And then the unexpected effect of running a quarterly market with the seasons here was that we could evaluate it, and then we put a case forward from that to the council for why they should let new startups or new growers have free stalls on their charter market. And they now do that in the summer months. So you can use it as a leverage point to shift what other markets exist and put a case forward. And we did an environmental audit of it to demonstrate other ways that growers can be on a market without producing a lot of waste with promoting values. And you can use that as a leverage point to shift council policy. So think of the multiple uses of using a market, because it's a lot of work. So make sure that you're thinking through why you're doing it. But they are a great tool to bring people together.
Amazing. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, thank you all. Caroline, did you just want to hear?
I just wanted to ask a question about the market, actually. To Anna, did you try any, because I know that when I researched with growing communities, they have like a joint market stall where people can bring down produce, so they don't have to stay and stand there all day and sell it. they just like bring it along and then they get the money if it sells, basically? Did you try anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, so we're very generous in how we've run them. So for those who don't have insurance, we cover them with lessons insurance. We help people learn how to do a risk assessment. If people don't have a gazebo, we join groups up so they can share staffing and sell them. Yeah, we do all that. But all of that takes more time as well. So if you're thinking about the hours you put in and how much, if you have a team of people that just want to help support it and money's not an issue, that's an amazing way to build community and support. But if you're running, you want to be paid for every hour you put in, all of that adds up. So you need to think again, like what's your context? Who do you have available to help with it? But yeah, the shared market stalls are a great idea.
Brilliant. Thank you, Leeds crew. Catherine or Ellen, who would you like to? Yeah, go for it, Catherine.
My colleague Liz is laughing at me here because I've just volunteered myself, so I don't know how this will go. She'll be heckling me. I thought it was quite interesting to jump in at this point because we've approached it in quite a different way, and certainly from Fran, we really have just jumped in with both feet with this. So I was kind of writing the feasibility report at the same time as actually starting to deliver some of it. So that was an interesting dynamic to work in. The reason for that is because we fundamentally got offered a really good bit of land, although small, a really good bit of land, and we had people ready to go, and it seemed to be completely nonsensical then to potentially delay it by a year and miss out on the January opportunity to start. So we've just kind of jumped in with both feet. We had some routes to market already established, and we had the Barrow market. We have a catering service that uses local food. So we had some routes to market already. We don't have, because so Middlesbrough is a 25 square mile area, so we're really, really tiny, and consequently our Farmstart is going to be fairly small. Our routes to market are fairly small, and what we don't have is any kind of high-end restaurants, and we don't have the kind of demographic that's going to prioritise organic food at all. So we've had to think really carefully about that. The bits of land, we got offered one bit of land, which was about 1 acre, but that also came out with an investment in capital, capital funding, and also with labour as well through some Kickstart trainees. So we've been working with them and the budget that we've got to actually set the site up and ready to go in January. So we are kind of fairly well along that route as well. So although the site's only small, we're actually kind of at the stage of being able to, we should be able to get stuff in the ground by March, which is just a great place to be. And we also got offered another 2 acre allotment plot and another very close but separate 1 acre allotment plot, which we've kind of banked for the future, given that they are going to take a lot more work to actually get going, and we don't have that capital ready to go with that one. So we've got some land available, and we've got enough to get started, and we've had, without really actively recruiting, we've had 11 people who want to actually start up on the Farmstart project in some way. So some of those people are ready to come onto the plot. Some of those people are already growing in an amateur way in spaces of their own. So we've written our Farmstart project to actually support people who are already working on their own spaces as well, because what we didn't want to do is take people off land that they'd been working on to put them somewhere else, to then longer term move them somewhere else again. So we've got a multi-pronged approach where we're bringing everybody together for training and for practical work on this 1 acre site, but we're also supporting people elsewhere to kind of develop their own spaces and then come back together as a group. We've isolated a training course, which is a level 2 3 credit unit that's accredited, and that's in growing, harvesting and using fruit and vegetables, I think. So it's a very, very basic horticulture course. And we've packed around that lots of different elements like expert sessions, site visits, and then specialist training and things like enterprise, marketing, branding, that kind of stuff. So it's going to run over the course of a year, and people will come away with an accredited qualification, but it'll be more about the experience that they gain around that as well. So we'll start delivering that in January as well, and as I say, that'll last for a year. what else is there to mention? Just putting just in terms of the training, we're just starting to put that kind of that schedule of delivery in place at the moment. That's what's happening between now and Christmas, but we're looking at meeting up with our farm starters once every fortnight. So there'll be some training, there'll be some practical work and an opportunity to keep together as a network as well. So this, the feasibility report that we've done, which basically proves that it will work in a small scale, we're kind of treating as like kind of phase one, like a pilot phase of this project. And over the course of next year, we're going to look at how we can kind of scale up, how we can get people onto those bigger bits of land. So this is a real stumbling block for our, because Middlesbrough is really insular. A lot of the farmland round, well, there's not much farmland round us, but most of what it is great big, like arable or livestock farms. There's very little kind of small spaces, and it's all stitched up basically. And we don't have a lot of contact. We don't have a lot of, there's not much in the way of relationships between farmers and kind of inner city areas. So that's something that I'm just starting to kind of build up now, just to find those ways of communicating and build those points of contact. So we've been in touch with, believe it or not, the Tees Valley has a rural community action project. So there's no rural land at all within the Tees Valley, but for some reason we have a rural community action project, and they've been quite helpful. But the other people who've been helpful are the police force, because they have a rural crimes officer who has access to contact details and a network for all these farms. So we're just starting to work on that at the moment. And that's kind of where we are at the moment. We're going to be starting in January, which is really exciting. We're doing lots of little activities with people, with the group at the moment, just to kind of do a bit of team building. So I think they're making spatulas next Monday, and they're doing some hedge laying next Wednesday. So just to allow them to introduce themselves to each other and get to know each other. And we're finding out about what kind of interests they have and what the longer term ambitions are, in quite a nice, gentle, relaxed way as well. So a totally different approach to both Fran and Beth, and we've got small amounts of land. We've jumped in with both feet. Different issues. I think it suits Middlesbrough, the project plan that we've got, and just really excited to be getting started now.
Wonderful. Welcome, Joe. Good timing.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Fran.
Yeah, Catherine, I'm really impressed that you're going straight in and offering accredited training. Nice one. Who's going to be managing that process for you? Who's going to be doing the tutoring? What's your plan?
So interesting question. So we're actually we've got we're accredited trainers. I'm an accredited adult tutor and assessor, and we're an accredited training centre. So for us, that's been really easy, just to kind of slot in what we're already doing. What we are, I wouldn't say we're struggling, but what we need to investigate is the funding to actually deliver the project and deliver that training next year. So whereas we've been quite lucky managing to access capital funding, the revenue funding to actually deliver the project is the next big stumbling block. So that's again something that we're looking into, and that includes the training, because obviously this is in the early stages, training is a huge part of what we're doing. So
Thanks.
When you say we, Catherine, do you mean Barefoot Kitchen?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have there's only 3 of us in total anyway. So I have a colleague, Liz, who's a chef. And is just shouting hello, and she's an accredited tutor as well, so she picks up with the kind of the food processing and the routes to market and that kind of thing, whereas I really focus on the horticulture.
Is your hand up again, Fran, or is that a historical hand?
A historical hand, I like that.
Joe, did you want to add anything?
I'm not quite sure what has been discussed prior, so I mean, basically, just working very, very closely in partnership with Catherine, Liz, and Barefoot, just to kind of get it. It's appreciating and understanding where skills lie, and kind of, and I'll kind of do all the stuff that Catherine and Liz don't want to do, and all that kind of, naff stuff, strategic kind of, trying to get it, worm it in, and kind of see where other opportunities to access funding, to access various different things, and kind of get it, you know, in under the noses of the right people at the right time, and stuff like that. And we'll work together to kind of make it happen, because it's great and we love it and it's right. It is absolutely right. I think Catherine did say that the time is right now, and it's we're forging on, and we will not be stopped.
I just wanted to chip in there as well. What we've been really lucky with is the support from Environment City that Joe works with, which is essentially kind of part of the council, in terms of accessing the kickstarts that have been able to learn as they're actually as part of this project. But Middlesbrough Council have been brilliant with this as well, because they've actually allocated us the land and some capital funding, and so the strategic framework that sits around this project has actually been really beneficial as well. So we're hitting the ground running, basically.
Can I just ask quickly, was there, in terms of getting the help from the council to sort of identify the land, sort of bank the land, and use the land and maybe bank future bits? What did you need to was there something specific that enabled the council to say yes to that, or was there evidence that you needed? Was there?
No, it's the nature of Middlesbrough is that we're not short of land, particularly, although we're a very small area. There's no waiting lists for certain allotment sites. They're at the position now where they're contemplating actually reducing the size of allotment sites because there's no demand for plots. So though we've got a very small geographic area, the demand for land within that is actually fairly low. So if we went to the council as we did and just said we'd like this bit of land, they just said yeah, and that was it. So
yeah. I mean, the land, phase one it's a part of the lease that Environment City hold. It's council land, but it's a part of our lease. So, you know, we kind of said, well, this is what we want to do with it, and we just kind of got on and did it. Is a part of our list, so that wasn't an issue at all. There are other bits that we've got, you know, we've got a good working relationship with the right person, and he absolutely gets this and sees the value of it and the long-term value of it, and so he is working away behind the scenes as well to kind of, if there are any barriers that are kind of there, he tries to work around them and to get what we need. So but it's, you know, as you know, it might have been said, that we're not rushing full hard with going big straight away. It's starting with a manageable kind of, you know, workload and what we can achieve. But we know that we've got loads of other elements sort of already in place, those kind of routes to market, those kinds of relationships, those kinds of structures through our food partnership and beyond, and other ones as well. So it kind of all seems about right, and this is you know, the right piece of the jigsaw at the right sort of time.
Bethan, do you hand up?
So your lease for the land, how long have you got it for?
I think there's another 15 years or so on it. Yeah.
I think the other thing to add to that as well is because of the nature of the land and because of the nature of Environment City, who are a registered charity, and because the other spaces that we are looking at are designated allotments, we've had to agree to running anything that we run as a social enterprise, basically. So we can't just go for a straightforward for-profit company. We're having to gear everything towards a social enterprise, which to my mind is absolutely how it should be anyway. And especially when it comes to kind of market gardening, when you know, nobody's going to walk away from this with an £80,000 a year salary. So it's kind of a nonsensical argument, but we are having to kind of reiterate with the Farmstart trainees that this is a social enterprise model that we're looking at. So, and that's basically to keep the council sweet. So that's a bit of a limitation, I suppose, that we need to bear in mind.
Brilliant, thank you, Catherine. Amazing stuff. And Joe being a sort of the, you know, the link person. Everyone needs a Joe, the link person between all the council shenanigans and everything out in the field. Lancaster. Ellen, would you like to go?
Yeah. So I thought maybe I could just share a bit of what we've been reviewing for this year, and then say a bit about like capacity building stuff. So yeah, it's amazing to hear how much you've all progressed such a short time. So that's brilliant. So yeah, so for us, so our Farmstart program has finished. We've got like a whole day review session on Friday with our farm starters to kind of close everything off, but we have done an internal review already sort of prior to that. And I guess like reflections on the first year, we've reflected quite a lot on the kind of training and the experience that we've offered our farm starters. And I think so we haven't done any like formally accredited training. We jumped on board with Kindling's sort of upfront classroom sessions, but they were on Zoom because of COVID. And then we had a bit of a problem with the dates, which meant that not everyone, some people were kind of catching them up and some people were listening to them live. And probably our reflections on that is like the content was good, but it kind of needed to be located in the practicality of what was going on for us. So seeing the relevance of it was really important, and I think we felt like we were a bit detached from that, and so we need to kind of look at how we do that in future. The thing that seems to have worked really well is like we've done lots of like in-person catch-ups. We've asked lots of like really good questions of people in terms of like what they want going forward, and we've asked people to do written like reflection pieces. I think we've done 4 and they're doing one for the final session, and I think that's really helped people kind of sort of reflect on their own journeys and what they want, and what people have wanted has changed quite a bit over the experience. And then the other thing I was going to say was, we really tried to build in the sort of business planning. So of our farm starters, 2 of them had quite a lot of growing experience already, and seemed to want the business planning side, and the other 2 maybe kind of wanted more on the growing side. But it's like we've really struggled to sort of, I don't know, almost force people to like actually sit down and do a dummy crop plan, or actually, like we've done the sessions, but the hard bits, it's been hard to like really get people to do. So we were kind of reflecting on how we might do that differently next year. Just because felt like that was the bit that people most wanted, and the bit it was most difficult to kind of really impact somehow. And then and then we've, in terms of moving forward for the farm starters, so we've tried to be very tailored for individuals. I got a little bit of grant funding so that people could pitch if they needed like a couple of grand or a few £100 to do something, to explore a site, do some soil tests, take a bit of time off work to scope something, so that it was really flexible to help people like progress their own journeys. And then we're kind of really trying to match people up with opportunities, land or whatever, where there's a fit. I'd say in terms of like us being a sort of profitable, viable enterprise, which was always the intention, like that's been really difficult. I think we've achieved just over half our sales income that we'd set out in the original budget. But it was also a slow start with setting up a new site. And I felt like we just kind of got some momentum going, and then we've kind of pretty much closed down for winter, and the site's really wet. So there's lots of learning in there, and we've been going around to our kind of customers, checking out what they want next year and how we can sort of meet demand better. And then going forward, I guess the pieces of work like within this project was around sort of capacity building. So I think I visited 5 sites. I've been looking at 5 different sites where people are offering land, or there's opportunities for building on what we've done so far, including most excitingly one in like just on the edge of the city in Lancaster. So I think in the longer term we'll be looking to move our Farmstart program into the city, because it's like 8 miles south of Lancaster, and there is a bus, but it would be sort of more accessible for generally sort of education and engagement programs in the centre. And then, so there's that, yeah, there's those sites. So I'm kind of in my mind thinking like there's going to be a bit a larger scale funding bid which helps us to set up multiple sites, and then we need to kind of really develop the marketing and the distribution piece. And yeah, I need to spend a bit more time like working out how to do that. So we've got other local producers who want to sell. We've just been providing ordered boxes through the Open Food Network site, which is amazing software for anyone who wants to do kind of direct sales. It's so easy to set up and really cheap. But we're kind of at capacity, so we can't really bring any more boxes into town, in our single car or whatever. So it's like, how do we make that whole thing work? And yeah, I've actually got offers now of a van that could do a round for us. I'm just thinking about how we work best with that. And yeah, maybe a sort of, yeah, do we just jump in and trial something sort of small scale and see how it works, or yeah, do we do more scoping? But thinking of sort of flexible ways of doing that. So yeah, and we're about to re-advertise for our Farmstart program, and we're probably looking, we're taking on more land, so we probably think, like, we had 4 last year and 1 person withdrew, so we're probably thinking maybe up to 6 farm starters. And we've also got funding for it's not quite fully funded, but it's kind of like a 2-day grower trainee type role. So they'll work alongside, sort of for a bursary. I've got a few thousand, but it won't be at it won't be like full pay for 2 days a week. So kind of work alongside like our grower and our expert trainer and me in terms of the strategic planning and all the planning for the site. But then their job will be to, like really crack on with the growing, while Tamsin, our grower, kind of also supports the farm starters. So we're aiming to increase capacity that way.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Ellen. Fran, and then Susie.
Thanks, Ellen. Something I wanted to pick up on, because this is a puzzle that's going around in my head, is if you've got people who think they know business stuff and are coming for the growing, and you've got people who think they know about growing but are coming for the business stuff, then how do you accommodate them both at the same time?
Yeah, so we try, our model is that we've had Tamsin, who's a grower, like 4 days a week. So she's been doing all the on-site kind of mentoring, I suppose, and people have been working alongside her. And then we've also had monthly like training sessions with someone else from a local, from Growing Well, from an organic, who's got lots of more experience in terms of like the business side of sort of small enterprises, horticultural enterprises. So we've tried to, because in our model, when James was on site or when I've been on site, we've been able to provide like more tailored input. We've tried to kind of listen to what people really wanted, and although there's a generic program, kind of meet their individual needs to some extent. But I think that's where it's kind of been interesting, because we sort of had some, like with one person, we had some sort of crux conversations in the summer where they were just really disheartened and like, I'm never going to do this, because it's that you can't make any money from it. And we're like, well, look, we've got networks, we can help you, but you need to do a business plan, or you need to at least decide roughly, when do you want to do this, like for how long are you committing for, like what's some of your vision, and then we can help you. And then when it gets to that point, it was hard to sort of progress beyond that, if that makes sense. So I feel like there's a lot of almost unacknowledged barriers in helping people to take that risk and jump to the next step. Sorry, I don't know if that really answered what you asked me, but
yeah, it kind of makes sense, because I have a feeling that the attractive thing that Farmstarts offer is the space to grow with some training and community support, and I'm just worried about how you then sort of step it up to that next. Well, this is about business, because I'm very conscious of when we come to market our Farmstart, the emphasis is going to be on this is about incubating businesses. This is not, do you fancy growing a bit more on some extra land? So it's like, just, how do you sort of narrow that down? I guess you just have to do it and then see what happens in your own unique circumstances and then react to it, I guess.
And I was a bit surprised, like we did some things where we just divvied stuff out. So like everyone wrote an article every month, like for the website and to send to our Food Friends supporters and this sort of thing. But I thought people would have more interest in like getting more involved in the marketing or the sales part. I kept sort of offering that out, but yeah, didn't really get any takers. So it was kind of it was sort of an interesting experience. But I think next year because we've been trying to develop a sort of Farmstart business game, I think we're going to pilot running that at the beginning. So that's going to be like a day in person where people have to just like, really quickly and high pressure, but like come up with a name, come up with a business, come up with a model, come up with a crop plan. Like we'll give them the template spreadsheet, a load of stuff will happen, and then we'll see how they outturn in the year. And I don't know, we think if we do that at the beginning, maybe that will sow some more seeds to kind of go forward. Because we did lots of creative things. I made like little land matched with what people's interests. I gave them all like a piece of land to scope out the site, to think about the site plan and things. And it was helpful because it prompted it. I think the reactions that it prompted were really interesting, because some people were like, oh my God, 10 years. And it was like, oh, I thought that was a good thing to give you something with a lease for 10 years. But their personal reaction was like, I'm not committing to that for 10 years. So it was kind of good for uncovering stuff. But yeah, we didn't quite, I don't know, there's stuff for us to tweak on it, I think. Yeah.
Was that the game that you say, Ellen, that you
yeah
business
game? So we got this funding to develop this game, but we haven't run it all in one go yet. We've just kind of drip fed the sessions. So we sort of piloted the individual bits, and then we're going to try and put it all together in like a one day thing. Yeah.
Susie, then Hattie.
I've had a couple of things. One was a question for Ellen, which I may have missed the answer to because I got up in the middle of you talking and couldn't hear. But was do you know why you didn't break even or make a profit? I guess was the question. But and then the thought from what Fran was saying was, and it might not be useful. I know Steph's been in a session with you, Steph from LWA, and I know mentoring and Farmstart are quite different, but I've had an interesting conversation with Steph about their mentoring program and the one we run at the CSA network, and sort of that I think touches on some of the question you had, Fran, about how you balance out, how you run it in a way that meets everyone's needs. And then the bloke who's doing the new entrant scheme for DEFRA was asking some questions the other day, and that made me think about it again. And I was just thinking it might be interesting for anyone, for all of you and like Steph and myself, to just have a bit of a chat about what makes and Ellen, you've got loads of experience, like what are we all learning from doing this stuff, because it still feels quite new, and maybe organically too. I mean, like how does it work best? I mean, like one of the things from the new entrant scheme was just you have to assume that you're going to have a drop off, and if you don't, you're not. And that I don't think that was built into their scheme, but I think you've got I don't know, there's just. And then with Steph, we kind of realised that we'd both put group, and I know this is slightly different from Farmstart, but we'd put group meetings in. We'd both put group meetings in for our long-term mentoring projects, and nobody really wanted the group meetings. They didn't feel that useful, whereas we both kind of thought, oh yeah, that's going to be an amazing place for sharing, and it isn't necessarily. So I guess maybe there's just some shared thoughts on that particular subject that might be useful.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Everyone seems to have such different models, and I feel like a lot of it comes down to like the actual personal relationships in that. I mean, if we hadn't had James, I think we'd have really struggled, because he had, you know, I can bring the project management side and Tamsin can do on the ground stuff, but his sort of broader expertise in terms of the business setting was key. And actually, I guess because he does a lot of work, I don't know, I think like I've got a background in coaching, so we had a sort of similar approach and think in terms of the way that we were asking questions and kind of going through, which was helpful. But I think if we'd just done the upfront training and like done nothing else and just let the scheme run, But to answer your question about why we didn't break even, a lot of that was because we'd planned a crop share CSA type model, and then we didn't have enough produce at the beginning to get going with that. So we had to change that. And also because we had an amazing site with a cafe and a shop on site and massive amount of footfall that closed during COVID. So then we basically had to kind of revamp. For those two reasons, we had to completely revamp and change all our models. And it was also based on selling a really high amount of salad, which we didn't manage to do.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that's, I also just wanted to add, I think in terms of like inspiration, like you saying about I don't want to think about 10 years time. The thing that is definitely most inspiring for our mentees is visiting a brilliant CSA. It's so different when they visit somewhere that's functioning. That's what makes them go, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. And you can't replicate that any other way, I don't think. It's really worth even if it's quite far away, I think it's really worth the time.
Thanks. Hattie, and then we'll kind of come back as a circle.
Susie, definitely visiting sites is just absolutely amazing for new entrants, isn't it? And we're finding that quite a lot. And we've got 2 trainee programs going at the moment, one in Wales and one in the south, and we're getting so much positive feedback just from all the visits that they do. So I definitely agree with you there. And I guess on that mentoring thing, you were talking about Steph with some useful feedback. I think it's a good idea to come together and do that. And I think you're right, she would be able to input that into that in a very constructive way. At the moment, we're evaluating that project with an external person that we've brought in. And again, I think that will be really useful to feed into future stuff. Let's keep the conversation going around that. I guess sticking with the feedback and evaluation stuff, Ellen, I was like very interested to hear that you're sort of going through that with your farm starters at the moment, particularly because I don't know whether anyone else has read the shared asset report, but it's just really great, I think. And to hear the voices of people that have gone through all these different Farmstart projects, and what I'm hearing a lot and know is that they sort of vary wildly, and that in some ways is like the beauty of them. But having this kind of like opportunity for reflection and feedback from the people who are doing it themselves, I think is really, really, really crucial. So I'm keen to sort of think about how we do that potentially sort of in a collaborative way, so that we're developing as far as possible in a way that kind of listens to that feedback. And I think that's all I had to say. Ellen, it's really nice to hear that things, although obviously you've come up with against some barriers, it's really cool to hear you're expanding, and like, you know, it's just, it's great. Just very great to hear everyone's developments. And that's it from me.
Brilliant. Wow. I feel really full. It's coming up to past, but I'm really happy to just give this more time to make it so that you all feel that you kind of going away with what you need from coming together on the Farmstart project. I was thinking if it was useful to name specific kind of barriers or gaps that you're encountering that you need specific help with, not necessarily here, but just to flag them so we can kind of hold them, you know, as we go into the new year and address them. Fran, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think that my weakest area at the moment is knowing where to look for funding, really. And I think the reason it's my weakness is because although I've run many projects in my time, I've never had any money. So funding has never really been my sort of my speciality, if you like. So any kind of pointers on that would just stop me like having to just, you know, spend at least 2 days of my time just looking at all the funders and then realizing that half of them aren't relevant. Any pointers in that direction would be gratefully received. Thank you.
I'd be really interested to, Susie, you said that you were in a meeting with the new entrant support scheme stuff, the DEFRA stuff. Is there anything that you can feed back from that to us about that direction of travel? You know, are we going to be able to like apply as a collective and receive loads of funding?
I don't know. They've still, we've been pushing for them because some of you may have been in it. There was a meeting a couple of months ago, I think, which about it. And one of the things that we were pushing was that, that you could apply as a collective rather than an individual. So the meeting I was in with him was a meeting of county estate managers. So it was a little bit off piece, I guess, but well, probably not actually for all of you local authority people. But yeah, it wasn't clear whether they were going to make it available to groups as well as individuals. And we were saying, but that's going to cut out loads of potentially amazing food growing projects, farmers, collectives. So I don't know is the answer to that one. It's still, probably other people on this call know more than me. It still feels very woolly around the edges and like they don't really know what's going to happen is my brief update on it. But yeah. I also don't know what the criteria are going to be because they've not removed the 5 hectare limit for any of the other stuff they're putting out. So I don't know whether it's going to be available to, I don't quite know how it's going to work and whether you're going to have land and any of that stuff. There's a presentation that they did at the thing a couple of months ago. I think it's probably shareable. But yeah, I think the thinking will have moved from there a bit. But they divided people into nice, neat groups, like allotmenteers and young, excited farmers and older, retired people. It was a little bit scary.
Cool. Is there any sort of timeline on that we should look out for, or any?
I can't remember. I can look it up. There's probably, I'm sure it'll be on the web. I can't remember, but sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Does anyone else know anything more about that to add in stage?
No, not a huge amount to add. Georgie, who's really involved in it from our perspective, is sort of saying similar things to Susie, really.
Yeah, no clear kind of way forward for smaller or urban approaches.
No, I mean, I think they're still, it's still big. I think, if you have a way into that team in DEFRA, you can send them an email, because it does feel quite woolly, and it does, I mean, whether or not it make any difference.
I sent them an update recently. Henry Leveson Gower and his assistant Emma. Those are the only 2 people I know. Stefan.
Well, he's the one in charge, so yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Just to say, this is what we're doing and this is how it's going, and don't forget about us.
He's quite interested in co-ops. So I'm surprised that there's not. I mean, I guess it's not the civil servants that get to make the decisions.
Is there anyone else who wants to flag up a particular kind of gap or barrier that they're experiencing that they want help with? Catherine?
I don't think it's imminent, but at some point identifying farms and how you would go about that process, because I'm pretty sure it'll be the same elsewhere, but certainly farms and farmland local to us at the moment are getting snapped up by kind of, I don't know what you call it, like lifestyle farmers. Does that sound about right? Rather than people who actually want to farm, like people who just want to live in a house in the country with a pony paddock. And it's made not only the availability, but the cost of that quite extensive and quite excessive. And so some sort of, I just don't even know where to start to address something like that, whether it would be fundraising for that kind of thing, or I did attend, I don't even know what the context was, but there was a presentation about community-owned farms recently that was really interesting. I think that's a model that we could potentially use, but that I feel like is going to be a real stumbling block within the next couple of years for us, particularly being close to an urban centre, because those smaller scale bits of farmland where they come up tend to go for horses, just way out of reach for normal people.
It's definitely a thing, isn't it? And it's something that we've discussed as a kind of new entrant team at Land Workers Alliance, the sort of need for there to be an approach to this sort of land matching or working with kind of, it doesn't necessarily seem to be available at the moment. What we get at Land Workers Alliance is a fair amount, I'm not saying particularly in your area, but of landowners who would like to give up land, but don't have any kind of skills in creating business tenancy agreements that would make them feel comfortable and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I think there's an opportunity there to be a bit more joined up and a bit more savvy around the whole land matching and making land available for different organisations. And I think, yeah, having these conversations will help that, but there's nothing I can particularly add to that right now, apart from it's certainly on our minds.
It might be a kind of grass is greener type thing, but I just seem to see, especially in the southwest in Wales, there's all these kind of lovely little pockets of reasonably sized farms and farmland that come up, and they don't even hit the market here. There's just nothing, but something that connects, that connection, almost like a dating agency for farmers and urban growers. Or, you know, that would be great, but it just doesn't seem to be anything like that around here at all.
Fran. Oh, you're muted.
Ooh.
I think, or was it just I can't hear you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Picking up what Catherine said. So yeah, exactly the same problem around here. Lifestyle farmers. In fact, we went to see one the other day. She's better than that. She's got lots of good things going on there, but she hasn't got anything growing at the moment. Hence why she wanted us to come and have a look. But my question sort of more relates to the idea of, so Parks and Countryside, which is the department within Sheffield City Council who manages green spaces, woodlands, etc., are coming around to the idea of offering us spaces. So far, spaces have been kind of very vague. There's no kind of clear offer. But one of the things that occurs to me is that if, say, some of this land was suitable for setting up a Farmstart, because I want to set one up in an urban location, so, you know, a large area within an urban park, a la Kindling's rough style, then the difficulty I foresee is you've got City Council over here making an offer of public land, and then you've got we all know that there aren't enough voluntary groups in all the world to run those sites as just a voluntary community project. So the question I'm getting to is, what is the best method to convince local city councils, or indeed county councils, to use public land to incubate small businesses? Has anybody got any thoughts on this matter? Because I think it's going to be the worst conversation I've had with the council so far.
I can only add, Fran, that we're investigating some of that kind of looking at land-based enterprises, so not necessarily growing, but things like kind of land-based community type businesses with the council, but very, very early stages at the moment. But I agree with you. It's, you know, we're in an area of high unemployment, and we're in an area with a surfeit of kind of public land and public buildings. And to me, to put the two things together just seemed it's a no-brainer, really. So I'd like to think that our local council would move forward with that. But I think this whole idea, you know, when anything's focused on unemployment, it's always focused on getting people back into employment as opposed to self-employment. So I think there's a bit of a narrative shift that has to happen there. And councils are fairly slow at cultural changes, which is, I think, more what this is. But yeah, I think we'll get forwards.
Jeremy.
Yeah, I have been listening, honest. Mark Walton started talking about this aspect in that pre Northern Real Farming Conference events in September that Susie was in, and with Andy Goldring, and he said something around building a framework so that you could go to the council with an argument that included social and cultural investment as well as economic investment. So perhaps it might be worth following. I'll follow Mark up on what he was saying, because I thought it was quite an interesting. Every time we talk to the council, they're sort of hidebound by the requirement to maximise income from their resources. And what he was getting at was trying to break that cycle. So I'll follow him up and ask.
Susie?
Yeah, it was only to say, I don't know, so that meeting that Henry Leveson Gow was in was I don't know what the acronym is, but ACES, Rural Estate Managers. So they're the managers of the county farm estates across the UK. But I think they've got urban counterparts. I mean, I don't think Sheffield's got any county farms, because so in the end, that conversation ended up also talking about other bits of land that councils held that weren't necessarily part of a county farm estate. So, like, I guess and there was some interest in that group for all of those reasons, like that supporting small farmers or setting up new small farm businesses, food businesses is, meets loads of different local authority policy objectives. So I think there's a wider ACES group that is all the estate managers of urban estate and county estate, like rural estate. So it might be worth trying to find out who that is, and seeing what they're like. I mean, you probably know that already, but yeah, I guess that would be, I mean, I think persuading councils that bits of land they have could be totally used much better than they are is probably the way to do it.
Yeah, that point was made as one of the key points of the overall kind of document that collective of organisations, including the Ecological Land Cooperative, made to NES. And so, as Susie pointed out, that kind of like funding for and enlivening the discussion around council land and other land was certainly something that they've been made aware of. So, yeah.
Is that a document that you could share?
I've actually, because I've just chatted to Georgie about this to make a shareable version of it, because I think I think it just kind of encapsulates all the different points that that cluster of people have made quite effectively. So when she's sort of created one I can share, I'll definitely share it with the rest of the group.
Great, thank you. I think that the thing about understanding what your council's policies and targets are is really critical around climate, around health, around land use, around green and blue infrastructure, and all of those things. Like, really dig into what their planning objectives are and see, I mean, and this kind of food enterprise does literally tick all the boxes. So you've got to find what those exact boxes are and put them right in front of them, and with big ticks in, and talk about how it will meet this, that and the other objective really, really clearly. Using their language. And we've also got a planner working with us now. Some of you will know Simon Ruston, who, in terms of linking into planning policy, he's got a certain amount of sort of starter resource to work with each of the Northern Pathfinders on the linking the food and planning aspect, but we can talk about that later. Bethan and then Susie, and then I think we'll have a little break.
Sorry, I wasn't quick enough with the muting there. So it was a really good question, Fran. We managed to get I've gone across the border to Derby for various different reasons I won't go into now. But we managed to somehow go to an event with the CEO of Derby City Council, and we just got him drunk and fed him food, and then he was on board. That helps. Organise an event, bring them in. Might not work for everyone, but it worked for us.
It is the tipple season. So, yeah. Thanks. Susie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know, probably something that's outside the scope of this group, but isn't there a big planning consultation coming up? Like I think there's some big planning law thing happening soon, and I just was interested that we ended up, there was a conversation with some planners in DEFRA, and they hadn't heard of One Planet Development, and I'd kind of assumed that they would have, and I guess it's just, I don't know enough about it and I did read something yesterday, I think, about farms being bought up to grow some crop on by people that weren't living on it, which I don't know quite how they get around the stuff in the One Planet Development, but I don't know if anyone knows more and whether that kind of model is something that as a group we'd be interested in pushing in terms of planning in England.
Yeah, that's very interesting topic for another session, but definitely one to dig into. I think one of the authors of the One Planet Development Policy back in the day is kind of progresses, has sort of evolved it in the UK. He's calling it regenerative settlements, and he's based down sort of near Totnes. So it's definitely, it has evolved in some aspects of the thinking around it. And then you've got the One Planet Living stuff that Bioregional did. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting kind of tools and models around the getting more land connected communities and things. Yeah, definitely be nice to look at that. Fran. And then we'll have a break.
I just want to share my frustration, because the annoying thing is now is that Parks and Countryside, which have got huge amount of green open spaces, are coming to the food partnership and saying, help, we've got these really good spaces, what would you do with them? And I think the thing that's the frustration is that I have a feeling, because there is such a high allotment waiting list in the city, is that I got this sneaking suspicion that the city council think there's an abundance of volunteers and people with, you know, all the days in the world in order to just make these market gardens happen. And so it's like having this reality check without saying to the council, oh, well, yeah, you're just thinking about it all wrong. It's like, how do you find that middle sweet path where you can allow these spaces to remain open to the public, but also operate potentially as a tiny small incubator for new businesses? Because the issue I can foresee, having been involved in other projects, is that once you start taking green space away from people, as they might perceive, even though it's just a big patch of green grass that isn't very well used, somebody's going to suddenly decide that was their very favourite piece of green grass. So it's like, how do you come up with such a strong case that says this is a public good, because it's a public space for public good? That's how I'm trying to, you know, put it across. But yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a conceptual battle. So yeah, I think anybody else who's ever had any conversations in this direction, and I'll happily take some pointers off you.
Just on that note, in Bristol, they've been for a couple of years doing this Future Parks Accelerator, it's called, project, which is where they are looking, they want parks to be self-sustaining. So what are some ideas for developing income generating streams within parks, and, you know, inviting sort of you know, applications or ideas around that. So that might be worth sort of looking at. It's quite an interesting approach.
Yeah, Sheffield did that already, and
Oh.
went spectacularly wrong. They had like what they called a better park scheme, and they were looking for novel uses for their, huge amounts of green grass, etc. But they got one too many burger stands and ice cream vans. And as it turned out, I was one of the few people who managed to get through the application process because I was planning on leading nature-based walks. So it didn't. I don't know if anybody came forward with any growing ideas because obviously it's private, but yeah, I think maybe there's still some disconnect happening there, but I will be raising that point, the fact that this didn't come across as an idea during that consultation.
Yeah, Jeremy just posted referring to what Mark Walton said a couple of gatherings ago in terms of how to kind of work with local authorities. The question was, what would it look like if we made an investment in local communities? So rather than subsidizing things or feeling like you're giving things away, to frame for local authorities to frame things in terms of that everything they do is an investment in the local community with multiple beneficial outcomes. Is that right, Jeremy?
Yeah, it was actually in the first of the Policy Influencers Network meetings on the 7th of September. I just looked it up. Yeah, and so what he was talking about was trying to have a discussion that could break or could give the local authority officer a way out of just thinking about the economic return on everything, and actually saying, well, the economic return would be far greater if you invested a bit of money in the community now, that 5 years down the road would actually have some health, well-being, community, cultural and environmental benefits, as well as some potentially economic ones. But I'll get in touch with him and ask, because he's probably evolved it into some amazing paradigm of new utopia by now. So I'll get in touch.
On that note, let's all have a break. We've just kind of given that a good amount of time. Do people want 10 minutes? Does that feel like too long? Tell me what you 5, got 5, have a cup of tea, 5 to 10.
7.5.
5, Hannah's 5. All right, let's go for 5. Cool, see you back in a minute. In 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Oh. Sorry, I forgot to put these on. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I put the recording on paused.
Oh, well done.
Remember to tell me to start it again.
Getting good at this.
Well, there'll be a minute of silence, I think.
I think it's still recording.
It's not. It says paused.
Oh, really? That's interesting. It says it's recording at this end.
Yeah, it says it's recording for me as well.
But it's definitely paused at my end.
Thanks. Just for posterity.
It still says recording paused at my end.
No, it's recording.
I'll just press it again.
Great. So this last hour that we've got, so it's just 3. We've got till 4, and it's just to sort of have a reflection on where we've kind of come together, the journey that we've taken so far as a cluster of Northern Pathfinders with UAC, and then also to have a bit of a look ahead at where it goes from here. In the sort of in the context of we went for a big another grant that we were unsuccessful in, so we're having to sort of imagine the sort of scale of and scope of our opportunities together, and so we'll talk about that from past-ish onwards. I wonder whether we might just do like get in circle and do a round of kind of reflection on the experience of being part of this group, and the particular highlights or strengths or things that you have got from it, and that you'd like to kind of take forward. Just anything that sort of comes to you that you want to share sort of strongly. So if we maybe we could start, we'll just go round. Maybe we could start with Middlesbrough, if that's all right, and then we'll just kind of go round each in turn, just reflections of being a Pathfinder so far. Jo, do you want to start? Do you mind?
I think he saw my mute go off there and got excited. Go on,
you
Jo.
can pass and we can come back to you if you want.
Well, it's been great, and it's great. Forget the past tense. It is great, because it's, long may it continue. It's been, stuff which we've kind of been thinking about, dreaming about, wanting to do for ages, that hasn't really kind of got anywhere, and then being a part of this has kind of, I can't pinpoint what it is exactly, but it's obviously something very important because it's now making things happen. I mean, the Farmstart is just a perfect example, but then there's also dynamic procurement stuff, and just generally it's great. I think the it's down to and a testament to the people in the room and the skills and the interest, the enthusiasm. It's lovely, and obviously coordinated beautifully by yourself and Jeremy, and so it's grand. Catherine.
I just wanted to throw in something that one of our Farmstarters said to us, and he's a lad probably about 35, long-term unemployed, and has lived all his life in the 2-up-2 down terrace in central Middlesbrough, and he said to us, he said since the day I was born I've wanted to be a farmer, but what kind of opportunities does a lad like me have to get into farming? And I think for me, Farmstart is what's making that happen. It's giving people who wouldn't otherwise be able to be farmers the potential of being farmers, and just that one case for me makes it all worthwhile. So thank you for being the catalyst in helping that happen.
And LWA there. But can I just ask, when you're saying these fantastic things, which is what we do like hearing, it's very good for the massaging the collective ego. If you wouldn't mind putting stuff, because I'm always going to harass you later on, quick, give me a quote to put in the funding bid. If you don't mind putting things in the chat or send an email at any point, don't wait for me to ask, because let's just suppose we bother to put a funding application in on Friday. You know, to say we had a consultation on Monday and these quotes are in the bid on Friday is actually quite powerful. So that'd be really helpful. Thanks.
Jeremy, would it be helpful to have like almost a case study of that particular example and what the chap said?
Yeah.
I'll drop you a line with that.
Wonderful.
Isn't my quote recorded anyway? Isn't this thing being recorded?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. And also, you know, be completely honest as well about things that haven't quite been as, or could have been better. Anna.
All right. Feedback. So in general, I just think any space that brings groups together is brilliant. So this brought a new group together across the northern cities, which has led to other connections being made, which is really good. And just being part of it makes me carry this hat in the places I go. So when I met someone who had procurement or planning knowledge, I was like, oh God, we need him. But have you talked to the UAC? So it changes how I think as well. So that's that. Yeah, I think that's useful. And I mean, for me, recently, I've felt quite frustrated as well, because obviously, like here we have a lot of working groups with people that are better placed to come and attend because of the work they're doing. So Ellen around the Farmstart stuff, and so Ellen's been very involved with that, and then Rachel is a natural person to drive forward the dynamic procurement stuff. But all the core meetings that felt really relevant to attend myself, they were always felt quite short notice, and the date kept shifting. And then because I only work part-time, I found it really hard to attend meetings. So there's something about how meetings are organized across our partnership that's made it really difficult to participate this last year. Particularly because I'm not as involved in all the specific project stuff. So like the PIN group, I really want to be involved in the policy stuff. And I've just not been able to attend any of your sessions because they're on the day that I do other work at. So it'd be good to have those planned in advance somehow, and for them not to shift around so much. If they have shifted around, that's my experience. But then I think the dynamic procurement stuff is going to be so crucial in the long term. So I'm really glad there's a group working around that, getting ready for when we can come together. And it's really forced us to get serious about the procurement stuff here. And I think there's still a lot of potential for joint collaborative bids that support all the groups to go forward and shared learning. And I think this forum is a great space for that. And there's so much more I want to learn from all of you. I've just not had the time to come and come to all the meetings. I wish there was two of me. And also I think a lot of the rest of our partnership would like to be able to join as well, and they just don't have time. So overall, it's really positive having this platform. And I think there's still a lot of potential for collaborative bids and collaborative projects, and us all wearing the UAC hat to bring in other support for all of us. So it's great. Yeah. And I'm sure Ellen will have other thoughts from Lancaster as well when she comes back from the school run.
Thank you, Anna. That's really, really, really helpful. We have actually got all our foreseeable future ping dates already set up. So that's one thing. And yeah, do tell us also specifically about what things you want to hear about potentially or be involved in. It's always really good to.
Where do I find out about those ping meetings going forwards?
They will be when we do our website update. This will next week probably. They'll go on there, and on Jeremy's wall planner. So that's really useful.
There's a 22nd.
If you could fax us a copy over that.
22nd of February, 28th of April, and then a wider interest group meeting on the 31st of May.
Yeah.
22nd of February, 26th of April, sorry, and 31st.
Yeah, they're all on Tuesdays.
Yes, I've
Can't do that.
I've just noticed that.
Yeah, never mind.
Okay, well, if they haven't all gone out yet, Jeremy, maybe there's scope for changing some. I'm not sure. At least the second one, maybe. I think we've given out the date for the next one, but not the one after that. Anyway, let's look at that. Wonderful. And just on the point of dynamic procurement, there's a really quite important, I think I sent you all a link, important meeting coming up about the sort of a future vision for dynamic food procurement across the UK, which is now separate from Crown Commercial Services, who pulled out of the whole Southwest Food Hub thing. They did a U-turn, and so they're now sort of independently trying to set up the sort of infrastructure, the business infrastructure to kind of take it forward. And there's a meeting on Wednesday all about that, which I'm trying to get the West of England Combined Authority Mayor to pay attention to as well. Sonia.
Sure. First of all, I'm just going to pick up on what Anna was saying about the meetings and some of the communication around it. For me, it just really helps, even in the subject heading, it's got like the date in it as well. Like the most recent email that came for this one said our next meeting, and nowhere in the communication had the date. So just things like that would be really helpful. Just, you know, real clarity on stuff like that. And Caroline and Rob weren't able to get in for the link, so there was something wrong with the link as well. So just being super careful about those things, so there's no confusion. But aside from that, it's been a positive experience. I am this wealth of knowledge is just like my knowledge base has just increased huge, like tenfold around this area. And it's such a welcoming group. People share, and people are honest and open, and that's really helpful. And I also feel that having like the UAC as like being part of the UAC, being a pathfinder, helps to add weight to the conversations that I have with the people that I need to converse with. It's not just me. It's not just Foodwise in Leeds or whatever. It's a bigger picture. It's a vision for like the North. And, you know, I think the people in the council especially like to be a part of things like that. So that's been really helpful for us. And I also want to say, like, getting this initial report done as well has been really helpful, because it's, you know, we've been stumbling along over certain things, and it's just shown that, you know, these are some of the real stumbling points. And if we don't sort these out, we're not going to be able to progress. So just having that clarity is just sort of like, oh, okay, this is where we need to be focusing at this point. And then we can move further from there. So I think that's been really helpful for us. And long may it continue.
Wonderful, thank you. Bethan?
I just can't believe how many places we've been, people we've talked to, and things that we've done over the past 6 to 8 months. It's just been a whirlwind, but a good whirlwind. Going to actually see you all at Kindling Trust, that was amazing. For those of you that could make it, it was just great to see the lower half of your body. And yeah, like what Sonia said, having that backing of being not just a person interested in growing food, being part of the Landworkers Alliance and the Urban Agricultural Consortium, and being like, actually, we're a Pathfinder and we're doing this Farmstart program. And people are like, oh, oh yeah, okay, you are part of something real. You're not just a bunch of hippies wanting to grow some vegetables. This is the future of what needs to happen in the UK and our food economy. So yeah, it's opened a lot of doors, and I just can't thank you enough for having me on and being really helpful. You know, I feel like I could reach out to anyone at any point for support and help. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I don't think I've got anything negative to say that I can think of. More time, can you arrange that?
Yeah. Yeah. And just to say, I suppose that because you're the person that is part of this collective, Bethan, and not Penny, so Penny being like, you know, Sonia's equivalent or whatever or Joe's for Nottingham, but she's sort of, so Nottingham hasn't been so involved in the other bits and pieces that we've touched on with dynamic procurement and things, but been very much focused on this particular one through you. But it all connects in, and yeah, it's great to have you part of it, definitely. Fran.
So yeah, I would say what UAC has helped for me, particularly as I'm still, you know, feel quite relatively wet behind the ears in this role. It's only, well, it's been less than a year, which is no time at all. And what a year, everything goes so fast. So what UAC is consistently done is help focus my attention on the big issues, which is great. So, because there's so much going on, it's really good to sort of be brought back to, and now we're doing Farmstart and now we're looking at procurement. It's been really sort of helpful in that sense. And yeah, just the peer support is excellent, because ultimately I felt like I was coming into this and it was just like this wealth of information, you know, sense of urgency and all these great things. And, you know, it was nice for me personally being recruited to be thinking I was the right person for the role. And now being in environments like this, and to a certain extent fringe farming, but I think more so here, is like, oh yeah, I am capable, and I'm treated as a peer by you all, and that's great, because I feel like I know a lot less. And yeah, just the clout, being able to say, oh yeah, I'm working as part of a consortium of people who are doing this together. And because you know, I've been in the position so many times where I'm one person trying to change things, and it's really hard. So any kind of mutual support, you know, and just having this program that we're pushing through, it's just I don't know, I'm not sure how well I'd be doing without everyone else's support, so thanks everyone.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I for my part, I also feel like, because I've never been a grower, but more of a kind of convener, you know, facilitator, sort of projecty person, and it feels like a huge gap. I mean, it is a huge gap when I'm doing this work, to not have kind of more direct growing experience, and yet I know that, you know, each of us has something important to bring. We that's the point of doing it collectively, is that we don't all have to be good at everything, and actually we can't know and see all the different dimensions and perspectives. We need each other in order to see a richer kind of whole, and to enrich what we're doing. Yeah, and I've really loved it, and I love that feeling of I don't know, just like we kind of just really like each other. We really, you know, we really rate each other, and it's very sort of rich and kind of caring, and yeah, generous with your time and your honesty and your, you know, what you bring. So thank you all so much. Jeremy, is there anything you wanted to add at this point?
Yeah, thank you. All very interesting, and always just really nice to hear nice stuff back from people. It's just nice. It's just a nice way of working, isn't it? To actually be mutually supported, but really appreciated, and really appreciate other people. But to have had the opportunity that's what's great. To have had the opportunity to create something that has enabled this to happen is unique in my working life experience. And obviously Maddie and I have worked together on this now for 18 months. And so it still continues to be extraordinarily positive. Just the way we work together is just really interesting as well, because sometimes we fail to communicate and like you're hanging around waiting for something to happen. But then when it does happen, it always happens in the best way. It's just really nice. So what I wanted to say is that we have a limited amount of money. And as it stands at the moment, that money runs till the middle of 2023. As Maddie said, we applied to the lottery, and this is a really salutary lesson in fundraising. We had a conversation with them in January, on Zoom, 1-to-1, an hour long. The guy said, don't send in an expression of interest, leave it with me. I'll talk to some colleagues in the lottery. So after a bit of nudging, he came back to us and said, okay, I had a conversation. Please don't come through my strand, which was the Climate Action Fund. Please go through Growing Great Ideas. And here's the person who's running that, is somebody I already knew. So we had 2 or 3 conversations with her, including a meeting that she convened on Zoom, which included partners from Sustain and the Open Food Network. And the reason she wanted to have that meeting was to make sure that our 3 projects were complementary to each other and that we were all working in the same constellation, blah, blah, blah. So we did all that, put in the application. She moved on to another job. We had a conversation with the new person who came in, which again, we thought went quite well. And the next thing we heard is it had been rejected. And it's like 10 months worth of contact. And it's a bit like, oh, hang on a minute, we were at least expecting to get to the next round and then them say, well, Anyway, we asked for a meeting with them, which is tomorrow, to just, we're not expecting them to sort of say, okay, suddenly the gates have reopened, you can resubmit your application, but at least we'll have the opportunity to find out why that was rejected. But what it means is we are going to carry on working within the resources we've got until such time as an opportunity arises, which is a sensible one for us to apply for. And we could make reference to various funding streams that are out there now. Now, what that means is we've got enough money to carry on doing more or less what we're doing now, with some limited amounts of money to come back into the north for next year and carry on trying out what we've done so far. And the mantra we had originally was good enough for now and safe enough to try. And that's exactly what we've done. Sometimes we've tried things that haven't worked. Sometimes we try things they do work. But because we're not so wedded to a single notion of how it might work, that allows the flexibility, and that's resulted in the energy, I think. And then we've also, in the core oversight group, of which Susie's a part, recently we've been discussing what to do. And the idea is now start small, get it under control, or create something that's controllable, and expand gently from the perimeter. So within the resources we've got, that's what we want to try and do now. Now it's my responsibility that Nottingham was put in the northern cluster, because I'd had several meetings in Nottingham back in 2017 and 2018 and 2019 with Penny and Shona. And although it was very intangible what was going on, my feeling was always that Nottingham would be part of the pioneering part of the UAC when it happened. So that's why Nottingham ended up in the north. But clearly it's not in the north. I looked at the map the other day and it's like next to Leicester. So what we're doing this time next week, we're having hopefully a little exploratory meeting with people from Nottingham, Leicester and Leicestershire, Cambridge and Oxford. And that exploratory meet, they're all people we've spoken to before. That exploratory meeting will be going back to, if you remember, when we first met with the people in the north, just asking what would work, what would be useful, knowing what we know, knowing that things have moved on, knowing what Bethan's been telling us about the Farmstarts, just saying what would be helpful. And then we've already had an offer from Fran and Gareth in Sheffield to work with people in Chesterfield in Derbyshire to actually pass on knowledge. So that's a sort of what we're thinking, but there's a limited amount of funds. So I suppose that's maybe all I need to say at the moment. But well, perhaps just say I did have a conversation with Maddie about this morning, saying, look, how much energy have we got to chase you know, half-baked funding opportunities? Is it better to just work with what we've got now, and then at some point in the future, it's just have good faith that more resources will materialize somehow, you know? So I'm grappling with that, because I don't want to spend all my time writing funding bids that are just going to waste everyone's time. But also, thank you to everybody.
So it's sort of had it with the new funding that we can sustain, you know, the support and coordination of the Northern Cluster, and also start an equivalent sort of across the Midlands, and yeah, they can sort of interrelate, and yeah, because it's a great model, just bringing people together in solidarity and the diversity of places and people that can find community in this work. There was also, it's come up in a few different sources about whether there was room or scope or interest in other places in the north to join the Northern Cluster. And maybe there are places that you already work with that you think they'd be like totally up for it, and they'd be a really good person to, or partnership to reach out to invite them in. And, you know, obviously coming in at a different stage, it'd be more, there's a kind of getting up to speed, and maybe, you know, you couldn't just step into the Farmstart dimension of it, but there might be other ways that new Northern Pathfinders could benefit from stepping in at this stage. I just wondered what your thoughts were about that, and if anyone in particular, or just like, no, let's just completely keep it as it is, it's the wrong time to be doing that, or, you know, love to hear that. Joe?
I'm not 100% sure about Farmstart, but very much dynamic procurement. I mean, I work very closely with Hannah, Hannah and Peter in Durham and Emma in Newcastle, and I've certainly kind of, you know, we're doing a lot of work around local food economy and procurement and things like that, and operating very much at a regional level. So yes, I think from that side of things, I think I think it's pushing out an open door. I think it's pushing open a door generally with any sustainable food places network, or, you know, location anyway. I'm not quite sure where they're at in terms of Farmstart stuff. Durham one's going to be, it's an interesting one because it's a county level, and so, you know, there's obviously Durham City, but then they operate much wider. Newcastle, I mean, again, I don't know in terms of their, you know, capacity or interest and stuff, but I'm sure that there would be interest, but where they're up to, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think Newcastle would be, you know, it's quite heavily dense and populated and stuff like that. So what scope there would be, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I talk to them fairly regularly, so I can always broach the subject if you would like.
I'd like to throw Stockton and Tees into the mix as well. I think there's potentially people there who would be interested in replicating what's happening in Middlesbrough. They're very similar demographic, very similar setup, and we have a kind of mirror organisation there. And I think particularly for very small places, I mean, we're a large town, but we're small on the scale of kind of Nottingham and Sheffield and Leeds. I think there's a lot of learning that could be shared there, and I think this forum is friendly enough, and I think it's supportive enough, and I think there's enough variation in the way that we're delivering our Farmstart projects for other people to kind of step in quite easily, actually, with a little bit of kind of mentoring, or perhaps a little bit more intensive support in the background as well. So I think Stockton on Tees would be another possibility as well for us.
Thanks, Catherine. Does anyone else have thoughts about people joining the Northern Cluster? Bethan?
So I'm working with a project group called Down to Earth in Derby, and they're a nature-based community group at the moment, but they lead rambles into the Peak District, and we're working, this is big news and it's being announced, we're working with the Eden Project and Rolls-Royce on retransforming the city, and I think that should be another hub for the Midlands for the Farmstart programme, because we've got some really interesting things going on in Derby, hence why I've crossed the border. Because of course I needed to add more things to do.
The one I always find weird that they're missing is Manchester and Preston. I don't really get why there's so much going on in Manchester and yet there's not representation here. And like we've learned a lot from Kindling Trust and their networks, and in Preston as well around dynamic procurement. Really like Kay should be involved in this, and the people that she brought on to look at the Preston model, and again in Wigan as well. Yeah, I think there's so many that could come on around the dynamic procurement stuff.
Okay. Leon Ballin from Sustainable Food Places, who I met with recently, gave me a number of addresses, including people in Derby and Nottinghamshire County Council. So I've emailed some of those people, but I need to be careful because Leon gave me the addresses and therefore I need to approach those people. But if you've got any contacts, Beth, and you want us to follow up, either with the city, county or council or other places, that's great. Manchester's amazingly complicated. It's the second largest urban area in the country after London, over 2.5 million people in 11 boroughs or 11 municipal authorities, with an elected mayor, as you know. There's also a Good Food Greater Manchester partnership, of which Kindling are nominally a part, but they very rarely take part. They did take part in the last one. The next one is Tuesday. I have consistently asked the chair of Good Food Greater Manchester to attend, not this meeting, but other meetings that we've held. And for whatever reason, they just either don't have the time or the capacity to do that. But I will mention it again. There's also Sow the City in Manchester, as well as quite a large number of other well-established community growing projects like the Hume Community Garden Centre. So yes, I agree. But Maddie and I, again, it's a bit like Birmingham. How would we do anything meaningful in a place of that complexity and that size? But we are trying. I haven't had much contact from Kay for a long time. The last time I heard, she was working in Egypt, working remotely from Egypt. But yeah, we can get back in touch with her.
Great. Joe?
A few years ago, I did a fair bit of work with Incredible Edible. I'm not sure what the relationship is there, but I'm aware of, Andy in West. I can't remember where he's from, but anyway, yeah, he might be. I don't know what the relationship is with Incredible Edible, but as a kind of like the idea and the concept, there might be people there that are looking to kind of upscale, go that bit more than what Incredible Edible is. But yeah, just thought I'd chuck it out there.
Cheers, Joe. We'll go to Elizabeth and then to you, Hattie.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, it was just to say on Facebook, Kay was back in the country to get her MBE. So it might be advisable to get in contact with her sooner or later. Might be that she's heading back to Egypt, not sure. But anyway, that was what I wanted to add.
Yeah, go for it, Hattie.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah. I'm afraid I have to go now, but just wanted to say it's been great to be here. And yeah, although I'm very new to the Northern Cluster game, you've all been very welcoming and it's been great to be part of it so far. I think that what I'm seeing is that this sort of more localized version of networking really does work very effectively. And so thanks to the Urban Agriculture Consortium for bringing that stuff together with Land Workers Alliance. One of the things that I'm looking at sort of in light of the DEFRA new entrant support and with the sort of steering group of the Farmstart network that Land Workers Alliance has been convening is sort of really developing our service provision, if you put it that way, for different farm starts from a sort of like wanting to develop or just interested to sort of fully fledged. And so I will hopefully talk to you guys a little bit more about that in the future. I appreciate that's not giving you a huge amount of information, but I think it's really important that there is sort of more support available for people at different stages of the Farmstart journey. And I'm looking forward to working with you all a bit more. So thanks for that. And thanks, Maddie and Jeremy. See you all soon, I hope.
Thank you, Hattie. Thanks for everything that you've brought to the project as well. It's brilliant. And just, yeah, it's great to have a collaboration with LWA. It's just like dream. So yeah.
Yeah, it's absolute dream boat to be involved with you guys. So thanks for that. I'll speak to you all soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Sonia. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Let's try again. I was going to say, it was last week we had that meeting with the Yorkshire and Humber, formerly whatever, public health or healthy, whatever. And I think that's becoming a really strong network now that they've opened it up, because I mean, it was just held within public health for the first few years. And now that they've opened it up, I think it's a very powerful network. And so I think I'm with Joe on the procurement side and making sure that that keeps getting linked in, because not necessarily that everybody would want to attend both, but perhaps we just making sure those linkages stay strong. But in regards to, but I think for two other areas that I would think should be included would be Hull and Calderdale. Would be that's who I would think of. I know they've got a lot of interesting work going on in Calderdale, and in their food packs that are going out this winter, they're working with their local CSA. So it's pretty awesome.
Great, thank you. Susie.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to be the, yeah, I guess I was just thinking that this group was kind of a pilot, and in some ways I think it's worth carrying on with this group and seeing what we learn and then opening it up post that, but I don't know whether that's being too cautious. I guess it feels like there's still quite a lot of learning. We've made amazing steps, but there's still loads of learning, and it feels, I mean, I've not been at many meetings, but from this one, it feels really useful to have this kind of small group format and be able to really chat very easily in a way that I think gets much harder when there's bigger group. That's it.
Thanks, Susie. Yeah, it's great to think about what is the right optimum size. And you know, in sociocracy, they say the optimum group size is from 5 to 8 people in terms of getting stuff done at a pleasing rate, but being inclusive enough to be, you know, as a kind of collective. So there's maybe some, if you go by that guide, there's some scope for, you know, for growing it, but in a very, perhaps in a controlled way, a managed, you know, very targeted way, perhaps. But it's nice to hear that you're open to that possibility, and perhaps, you know, see the benefit for other people and have suggested those that might benefit the most. Yes, I just wanted to share.
You turn your own mute on.
I know. Okay, what I was saying was the latest UAC sort of diagram of the project and the bits that are all the different bits of the project. So I'm just going to share this. Can you see that all right? You can minimize the people down the right if they're down the right, if you need to. So let me just say this was, oh, sorry. So that was May 2021. So I know you can't actually read anything, but in the middle, that's Pathfinder places, the core oversight group, and me and Jeremy as coordinators. And then the circles around are the different sort of themes, project areas that we were kind of investigating or wanting to explore or were active. And then that kind of evolved to, I was trying to depict what's happened since then. And it's that some of the things that were in that inner ring have sort of pinged out to an outer ring, and evolved. So, for example, here we've got the Mapping Food Hope Spots project with Lancaster, and that has evolved into a mapping community where we're bringing lots of different mappers together, and some of you have been along to those, and the next one's on next Monday, which has been really interesting and exciting. So we were involved in the 20-minute neighbourhood briefing paper, getting food growing into that with the Town and Country Planning Association, and that has kind of led to a connection with Simon Ruston, the planner, who can provide some really good kind of consultancy work as one of our associates, and wants to do that with all of you. And we're funding the first sort of offering that he can make to all of you. More on that to follow. Yeah, so you can see how it has kind of evolved. We've also got in here a kind of intention to focus in together on work with Elizabeth and growing real food for nutrition around nutrient density, and that's an area that we've always felt we'd like to turn into a project and with all of you, and that's something to sort of explore more earlier in the year, and also these sort of the issue of inclusion and diversity and equity, and I've been making contact with Flame, that is the kind of youth wing of the Land Workers Alliance, to start to get my head around what work we might need to do as a cluster and as an organisation around the inclusion, diversity, equity pieces of this work. So they're so central. So, and then the three sort of horrible yellowy green ones on the side are cross-cutting areas, governance structure, future-proofing, and the wing and the wider interest network group and evaluation and stuff like that. So this is how it's sort of a snapshot of now. We're also doing a piece of work around with the Church of England, with Incredible Edible, looking at accessing church land. The dynamic procurement thing is about to kind of restart with this this event on Wednesday, and then the policy influencing networking group, also of course ongoing. And I've got a conversation this week again with Bristol Community Land Trust to talk about the possibility of them taking on a portfolio of land, not just for housing, but also for food. So that's an interesting sort of exploration I want to pursue. So it would just be great to get any sort of feedback from any of you about some of the sort of areas, the focus areas of work in terms of how, like, things you want to pursue, things that are on this diagram, and maybe things that also aren't. If and there's a, you know, money obviously is an object, so but not thinking too much about that side of things. Are there things that you would specifically like to highlight as picking up on running with together in 2022? Or evolving together? Fran?
So just picking up on, you were talking about community land trusts. Many years ago, I did some investigation into this, more from a community housing point of view, actually. So yeah, I'd be really interested to know what thinking is developing in terms of, so the issues of housing and community gardening should be side by side. But I have a friend who works for Urban Splash, and it's appeared to be quite a new idea to her, the idea of making space in order to actually provide community spaces within housing projects. So yeah, I'm wondering how we can sort of bring both those voices together, because Sheffield needs a lot of housing. It also needs a lot of community garden spaces. So if we can think of those two issues together, and, you know, find some people who are really good at advocating for that, that would be really good.
Great, thank you. Does Sheffield have a community land trust for the city kind of thing?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, if there is one, I don't know it.
Okay.
There's just, you know, isolated small community developments around a few houses. That's pretty much the level. I think most of the exciting projects have been happening outside of Sheffield.
Yeah. Thank you. Anna, and then Catherine.
I mean, from our perspective, a lot of the essential work needs to happen around planning and policy. A lot of these other projects hinge on that, or the focus areas. So that's why I'm desperate to get involved with the PIN group. So please move it off a Tuesday, or find a way to be involved when it's not a Tuesday. And I think like Simon, he's brilliant. Like, I had a drink with him and he's already started advising us. So I feel like there's a lot of goodwill from him at the moment. So it feels like a good leverage point right now. But having done like the mapping work here, planning and policy, and embedding protections, perhaps land trust comes in there as well. That all feels quite key. And so if we were putting forward what we felt the priorities should be, those would be the three: land trust, policy, and planning would be the ones that I'd put forward.
Brilliant, thanks, Anna. Catherine.
Yeah, I've just mentioned this in the chat. We've done quite a lot of work with kind of ethnic minority groups around community growing, which, yeah, lots of learning from that I think needs sharing. But just in terms of kind of the demographic that we're working in, there's a lot about kind of, we've very much tried to write our Farmstart project about people who are who have nothing, and how we can make it possible for those people to access this project. So it's not just about having money or having kind of disposable income or not having to work. It's still available to people who are on benefits and on long-term benefits as well. But yeah, it was just a statistic that popped up, and I can't honestly remember what it was, but it was about the diversity of farmers, and something utterly ridiculous about 99.6% being white British, which is nowhere near representative of, you know, the kind of population in the UK. And I think we need to do a lot more to make that more accessible to people, in particular people who are entering this country with often very advanced growing skills, and the need to kind of support themselves through enterprise. So I think there's a huge piece of work there about how we can make these projects accessible to people, but also what we can learn from involving people that might not normally step forward in these projects as well. So really interested in that and where it could go.
Thank you. Fran.
Just a quick point to Catherine, really, just picking up on what you just said about making it Farmstarts accessible for all. Because yeah, I've had the same experience. I've been working with somebody who's seeking refugee status, and he grew in Sudan. He knows what he's doing. How do we make it easier for people to get straight into it and actually show people in this country maybe how it's done? Because there seems to be a bit of a psychological block for certain people in this country. So yeah, any information you have to share on that, I'd be grateful if you could. Thank you.
Great. Our next, the plan was that our next ping group was going to have a focus of diversity, inclusion, equity. So yeah, that's the intention. Maybe you could bring some of your experience, Catherine, into that session as well.
Yeah, I don't think I'm on a mail out list for the invitations for that, but if you wanted to include me, that would be great, Maddie.
Yeah.
Okay, well on that, before we go changing the dates, Anna Clayton, what days do you work?
Monday and a Wednesday.
Okay, so you prefer to be on a Monday or a Wednesday?
Yeah, but I can be flexible on Thursday and Friday as well. It's just the one day I definitely cannot do as a Tuesday.
Okay, I think
sorry.
I think we've got the message. We'll
yeah.
change it.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Any other thoughts about future directions, Sonia?
Nothing particularly. I mean, I think we're going in the right direction. I think we're going in the direction that's important here in the city. There's a couple of interesting projects in Leeds around diversity. So obviously there's Catch, which is a young people's project, which is really interesting. And there's also the rather fabulous allotment gardener called My Family Allotment, or My Family Garden. Yeah, I've not met him yet, but he's pretty prolific with his information and stamping out racism in food growing. Yes, it's called My Family Garden.
My Family Garden.
Yeah, Motin Ali. He's on Facebook and Twitter.
And that's in Leeds.
Yeah.
Nice. Great. Anything else anyone wanted to add at this point? We're in our last few minutes. Goodness me. I'm happy to share this with you if you want to ponder that more. So hopefully you've got a kind of sense of where we're at and where we've been and where we might go, and that it's kind of still moving in a quite an emergent way, which seems to be fruitful, and there's momentum in kind of what we're doing, and that it's beneficial to, in a number of different ways, to be sort of part of a collective movement, looking at these shared needs and challenges and opportunities together. So actually having those kind of these are the priorities that we need to focus on in the coming years. Really, really helpful. And if anyone has more thoughts on that, just email us or call or whatever. Jeremy.
Just add, because it was mentioned in passing there about governance. The structure at the moment is that UAC is the project which is coordinated by Green Future Associates, which is a CIC. And that's fine because it's all working and there's nothing to change. However, in the interest of longer term succession planning, we will be carrying out some sort of review of that during the sort of April, May time, when we do our annual evaluation. And that will be an opportunity for people to say, well, you know, depending on how the funding is looking, what would the longer term structure of governance for UAC be? Should it be a standalone organisation? Should it be under someone else's wing, etc.? So that's just to flag that up. It will be on the horizon.
And we have asked Hannah again if she would be interested in helping us with the evaluation. She has less capacity this year, so if she does do it, it will be a kind of more like a workshopped type of format or something like that, where we get together. So rather than one-to-ones was her thinking. So she doesn't have the same amount of time. Caroline, did you have it? Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you very much for inviting me, and it's been really helpful, even though we're just very much at the infancy of thinking about this Farmstart. After doing the report, it felt like, oh my goodness, there's so many barriers and so much to do. But like hearing everyone's stories has been really inspiring to see it kind of happen. So thank you for that. Thank you to everyone for sharing your inspiring stories. It's been great. Makes it seem possible.
Here. And great that you're here and that you kind of got you know, come into the project with Rob. That's really cool. In terms of like touching base again about where we're at with the Farmstart process, because it's at the moment it's quite open-ended, as in we don't know like exactly, everyone's at slightly different stages and have different needs, and we haven't got a definite kind of source of like next stage funding. So it feels like it would be useful to sort of come back together, maybe like in a couple of months, to where depending on where we get to with funding and other things, and just to kind of would that be, does that feel like a good thing to do, like early Feb type time? Would that be useful? Because there's lots of things like in progress that might have kind of landed somewhere by then. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. I'll do a doodle.
I feel like meeting regularly has kept me focused and kept on track. Like when we had a bit of a brief break between like kindling and our next meeting, I was like, I don't need to work on Farmstart for a few. So having something in the diary as a deadline is something I personally like to work with.
Great. That's really good. And we're just coming up to the end. So it's like, is there anything that anyone else would like to throw in by way of how are you leaving this meeting? Just a few words from you, and Merry Christmas might be mine. Yeah, just to, yeah, anyone want to close off, check out.
Just to come back to the funding that was mentioned on the email, and I know I think Jeremy touched on this as well. If it's the same one I'm thinking about, it's a fairly lengthy application procedure at a short deadline for not necessarily any guarantee of success. But is that the kind of the general feeling on that?
Really sorry, I completely forgot that we were going to talk about that.
I don't know, I think it's been raised. Yes, that's correct, Catherine.
But that's not to say we won't have a go if it's what we feel if we feel it's collectively that it's worth it. So I was thinking, does anyone have to go right now? We've got a couple more minutes. Elizabeth's got to go. Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks for being here. Great. Bye. Oh, Fran's also got to go. All right, we'll email around a few thoughts about it, because thinking specifically in relation to, you know, the Farmstart as something that could add some extra dimensions, funding around particular dimensions to do with carbon reduction bits of the Farmstarts, maybe around, you know, reducing transport and soil quality.
We're all talking about the co-op one, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, fingers need to be burning up that keypad because it's midday on Friday, I think, isn't it?
It is.
No problem. So we'll see. We'll see. Thanks, Fran. Great.
Bye, everyone. I'm going to go now as well.
Yeah.
Nice to see you all.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone. Lovely to see
Bye.
you all too. Thanks.